नरेंद्र मोदी जी का धन्यवाद करता हूं और आप सभी को बधाई देता हूं, क्योंकि ये वास्तव में भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था को, भारत के 140 करोड़ नागरिकों को, हर गरीब, किसान, मछुआरा, गांव में रहने वाला युवा, युवती, हमारी बहनें, महिलाएं, सभी के लिए ढेर सारे अवसर लाने वाला ट्रेड डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कल तय किया। साधारणतः तो हम पार्लियामेंट में बोलना चाहते थे इसके बारे में, लेकिन हम सबने देखा वो भद्दा दृश्य, जिस प्रकार से विपक्ष, विशेषकर राहुल गांधी जी के नेतृत्व में कांग्रेस पार्टी और उनके मित्र पक्ष डीएमके, तृणमूल कांग्रेस, समाजवादी पार्टी, कितना भद्दा व्यवहार आज उन्होंने पार्लियामेंट में किया। माननीय अध्यक्ष जी की आसन तक पहुंचकर उनका अपमान किया। मैं घोर निंदा करता हूं विपक्ष की, राहुल गांधी जी की, जिसके कारण हम पार्लियामेंट के बदले आज आपके समक्ष यहां पे जानकारी देने आए हैं। हम सब जानते हैं कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपने मित्रता के रखते प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप के साथ जो उनके आत्मीय संबंध है, उसके मद्देनजर जो ट्रेड डील यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के साथ फाइनलाइज की है, वो हमारे सभी पड़ोसी, सभी आसपास के देश, सभी जो देश हमारे साथ स्पर्धा करते हैं, उन सभी देशों में सबसे बढ़िया डील भारत को मिली है। आप सबको, हम सबको मिली है, जो देशवासियों के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए शुभ संकेत लाती है। हम सब जानते हैं, महीनों से हमारी नेगोशिएटिंग टीम्स यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के अधिकारियों के साथ, मंत्रियों के साथ लगातार डायलॉग बनाई हुई थी, बातचीत में कर रही थी। कई सारे जटिल विषय थे, कई सारी समस्याएं थी। भारत के ऊपर 50% रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ लगा हुआ था। उद्योग जगत को, हमारे किसानों को जो बड़ी मात्रा में निर्यात करते हैं, सभी को तकलीफ हो रही थी। हमारे मरीन एक्सपोर्टर्स, सी फूड एक्सपोर्टर्स भी दिक्कत में थे। वस्त्र क्षेत्र, टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर में भी आवश्यकता थी कि ये रेट कम हो। यहां तक कि कुछ दिन पहले तक विपक्ष के नेता भी हमें पूछ रहे थे कि कब होगा यूएस डील। और मैं हैरान हूं, ये डबल स्टैंडर्ड्स जो राहुल गांधी जी बार बार दिखाते हैं। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कल इतनी बढ़िया डील भारत के लिए तय की है, जो इतने वर्ष, एक महीनों में हम तय नहीं कर पा रहे थे। उन्होंने अपने मित्रता के आधार पर भारत के हितों को प्राथमिकता देते हुए और भारत की तेज गति से बढ़ती हुई अर्थव्यवस्था को विश्व के सामने जिस प्रकार से पेश किया है, उसके चलते भारत को यह बढ़िया डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में मिली है। मैं पुनः एक बार उनके नेतृत्व के लिए, उनके मार्गदर्शन के लिए और जिस प्रकार से उन्होंने जनहित और देशहित को संभाला है, उसके लिए उनका धन्यवाद करता हूं। मित्रों, हम सब जानते हैं, पूरा देश जानता है किस प्रकार से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री हमेशा हमारे किसानों के लिए पशुपालन के साथ जुड़े हुए हमारे भाई बहनों के लिए, डेयरी सेक्टर के लिए लगातार चिंतित रहते हैं, उनके हितों की संरक्षण करते हैं। यहां तक कि हमने देखा इतना बड़ा ट्रेड डील, रीजनल कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक पार्टनरशिप आरसेप, जिसमें कांग्रेस ने भारत को झोंक दिया था 2011-12 में, एक प्रकार से चाइना के साथ एफटीए करने का पाप राहुल गांधी ने किया था। उससे भी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने देश को बचाया और आरसेप से जुड़ने से इनकार कर दिया, जिसके बाद पूरे देश में राहत की सब चारों ओर से सूचना आई थी। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने हमेशा एग्रीकल्चर और डेयरी, इन दोनों सेक्टर्स को संभाला है, उनके हितों को संभाला है और इस क्षेत्र में लोगों को उज्जवल भविष्य मिले और मौके मिले, आमदनी बढ़े, उसके लिए लगातार काम किया है। कभी उनके साथ, उनके हितों के साथ समझौता माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने नहीं होने दिया और मुझे खुशी है कि पूरा देश इस बात को समझता है, इस बात का उनको आकलन है। और यूएस ट्रेड डील में भी भारत के जो सेंसिटिव सेक्टर्स हैं, एग्रीकल्चर को लेके, डेयरी को लेके, उनको संरक्षित किया गया है। हमने पूरे देश भर से आई हुई खबरों को देखा, चारों ओर उल्लास है। हमारे जितने लोग भारत के निर्यात में जुड़े हुए हैं, भारत के टेक्नोलॉजी सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए हैं, भारत में नई आधुनिक टेक्नोलॉजी लाकर या ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन्स, ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन्स का हिस्सा बनना चाहते हैं, ग्लोबल कैपेबिलिटी सेंटर्स लगाना चाहते हैं, निवेश करना चाहते हैं। अलग अलग क्षेत्र जो विशेषकर लेबर इंटेंसिव है, जिसमें लाखों करोड़ों लोगों को नौकरी का, रोजगार का साधन मिलता है, वो सब कितने उत्साहित हैं इस ट्रेड डील से। हमारे मछुआरे जो सी फूड एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, उन्होंने जिस प्रकार से सभी कोस्टल रीजन्स में खुशी मनाई है, ये दर्शाता है कि ये ट्रेड डील भारत के उज्जवल भविष्य का शुभ संकेत लेके आई है। मित्रों, मैं मानता हूं कि इस ट्रेड डील से हमारे जो सूक्ष्म, लघु और मध्यम उद्योग है, एमएसएमई सेक्टर है, हमारे इंजीनियरिंग सेक्टर के सभी प्लेयर्स, चाहे ऑटो कंपोनेंट्स बनाते हो, एयरक्राफ्ट पार्ट्स बनाते हो, इंजीनियरिंग के अलग अलग प्रकार के सामान अमेरिका में बेचने का काम करते हो या भविष्य में करना चाहें, हमारे टेक्सटाइल क्षेत्र, हमारा जेम एंड ज्वेलरी सेक्टर, हमारा लेदर गुड्स सेक्टर, हमारा मरीन गुड्स सेक्टर, सभी को ढेर सारे अवसर, ढेर सारे मौके इस ट्रेड डील के माध्यम से मिलेंगे। बड़ा दुर्भाग्य है कि राहुल गांधी जैसे नकारात्मक सोच रखने वाले नेता देश को आज गुमराह या भ्रमित करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। मैं घोर निंदा करता हूं राहुल गांधी जी की। झूठ और फरेब के नाम पे वो लोगों को गुमराह करना चाहते हैं। उनको देश की तरक्की से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। देश आगे बढ़ रहा है, विश्व की सबसे तेज गति से बढ़ने वाली अर्थव्यवस्था बना है, उनको उससे कोई दिलचस्पी नहीं है। उनका बस चले तो जिस प्रकार से यूपीए के राज में, कांग्रेस के राज में 10 वर्षों में उन्होंने भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था को ध्वस्त कर दिया था, फ्रेजाइल 5 इकोनॉमी बना दी, महंगाई से लोगों को परेशान कर दिया, विकास यात्रा ठप कर दी, उनका बस चलेगा तो भारत को फिर एक बार उसी प्रकार से देखना चाहेंगे। और मुझे नहीं लगता भारत का एक भी व्यक्ति, एक भी नागरिक उनके इस भ्रामक सोच के साथ अपने आप को जोड़ सकता है। राहुल गांधी जी एक नकारात्मक सोच के प्रतीक है और उनके साथ जुड़कर डीएमके पार्टी के नेता हो, तृणमूल के नेता हो, चाहे वो समाजवादी पार्टी के नेता हो, इन सभी ने शायद भारत के उज्जवल भविष्य, हमारे युवा युवतियों को जो नए अवसर मिल रहे हैं, जो हमारा उद्योग तेज गति से आगे प्रगति करने के लिए तट पर है, जो नए नए क्षेत्र, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस हो, सेमीकंडक्टर्स हो, क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स हो, नए नए अति आधुनिक जो क्षेत्र खुल रहे हैं, उसमें जो हमें यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका से मदद मिल सकती है, जो वहां से हमें सामान मिल सकता है, हाई क्वालिटी, हाई परफॉर्मेंस डेटा सेंटर्स भारत में आ सकते हैं, लाखों करोड़ रुपए का जो निवेश हम भारत में आकर्षित करने में जुटे हुए हैं। राहुल गांधी जी को क्या मिर्ची लगती है? राहुल गांधी जी को देश की प्रगति से नफरत है? राहुल गांधी जी को हमारी बहनों से, हमारे युवा युवतियों से कोई नाराजगी है जो उनका उज्जवल भविष्य उनसे देखा नहीं जाता है? उन्होंने जवाब देना पड़ेगा देश की जनता को कि इस नकारात्मक सोच के पीछे वो क्या चाहते हैं। और मित्रों, मैं पूरी तरीके से निंदा करता हूं राहुल गांधी जी और उनके सभी पार्टी और मित्र पक्ष के नेताओं का, जो इस प्रकार की ओछी सोच, नकारात्मक सोच फैलाने का पाप कर रहे हैं। वो भारत का उज्जवल भविष्य नहीं चाहते। वो हर प्रकार से राजनीतिक अराजकता फैलाने की कोशिश करते हैं। पार्लियामेंट में आपने उनका रवैया देखा, उनका सोच पूरे देश ने देखा। वो हमारे आर्मी के जवानों पर कम विश्वास करते हैं, हमारे सेना के ऊपर प्रश्न चिन्ह उठाते हैं, हमारे उद्योग जगत के भविष्य को खराब करना चाहते हैं। मुझे लगता है अब समय आ गया है कि देश की जनता, राहुल गांधी जी हो, ममता बनर्जी जी हो, चाहे तृणमूल के अभिषेक बनर्जी हो या तमिलनाडु के एमके स्टालिन, उदयनिधि स्टालिन, बालू, श्री बालू जी, श्री मारन जी, कानीमोजी जी, कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी के नेता, समाजवादी के अखिलेश यादव जी, देश की जनता इन सब नेताओं से माफी मांगेगी और उनको जवाबदेही ठहराएगी उनके इस नकारात्मक रवैये के लिए। वो जनहित के पूरी तरीके से खिलाफ है, वो देश की प्रगति, देश के उज्जवल भविष्य के खिलाफ है। अनाप शनाप आरोप लगा रहे हैं और जिस प्रकार के विषय उठा रहे हैं, एक नेता ने पूछा, अमेरिकी अध्यक्ष ने, अमेरिका के राष्ट्रपति ने पहले क्यों ट्वीट किया? अरे भाई, रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ तो अमेरिका ने लगाया था, अमेरिका ने रेसिप्रोकल टैरिफ कम करना था। तो जब उनको टैरिफ कम करना है और 50 से सीधा 18% इतना कम हुआ, तो उसकी जानकारी तो उधर से ही आएगी। स्वाभाविक है कि उनको टैरिफ कम करना है तो उसकी जानकारी राष्ट्रपति माननीय डोनाल्ड ट्रंप जी देंगे। और इस मौके पे मैं माननीय राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप का भी धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं, जिन्होंने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के मित्रता का सम्मान किया उन्होंने माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी को विश्व का हमारे स्पर्धा वाले देशों में सबसे अच्छा बढ़िया ट्रेड डील दिया और आगे चल के भारत और अमेरिका के बीच संबंध और मजबूत हो और उज्जवल भविष्य दोनों देशों के लोगों का हम सुनिश्चित करें, उसकी शुभेच्छा दी। और मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि ये जो ट्रेड डील की गई है, ये मात्र एक ट्रेड डील नहीं है, ये एक पड़ाव है भारत के उज्जवल भविष्य का। ये आगे आने वाले दिनों का शुभ संकेत है जब भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था और तेजी से आगे बढ़ेगी। आज चारों ओर इसकी सराहना देखने को मिलती है। कल रात से ही जिस प्रकार से देश और विदेश में लोग इस डील की तारीफ कर रहे हैं, जिस प्रकार से चारों ओर लोग सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं भारत और यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के बीच ये डील, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि ये जो जनता ने ठुकराए हुए नेता हैं, द फेल्ड ग्रुप ऑफ disparate, disgruntled and rejected leaders of the Congress party and their friends in the DMK, Trinamool Congress, Communist parties, Samajwadi Party, the entire India Alliance leaders who have failed India very badly, who have failed Bharat in all respects, will be rejected by the people of India, who will teach them a lesson for their negativity and for their anti-India, anti-national thinking. Friends, we stand for the people of India, we stand for national interest, and today 140 crore Indians are celebrating a trade deal which is under final stages of detailing between the negotiating teams of both countries. We will be shortly issuing a joint statement by both countries along with the details which we will be shortly inking between the United States of America and India. And as soon as the final understanding of the deal is inked and the joint statement is finalized, technical processes are completed, full details will be shared. But I can assure the people of India, I can assure 140 crore brothers and sisters that this is a deal that will make every Indian proud, that will protect the interest of every Indian and provide huge opportunities for all the people of India, and will protect the sensitive sectors, the interests of our agriculture and our dairy sectors in full respect, opening up huge opportunities for our labor-intensive sectors, export sectors in textiles, plastics, apparel, home decor, leather and footwear, gems and jewelry, organic chemicals, rubber goods, machineries, so many products, aircraft components. This is truly a deal that every Indian can be proud of. India is a fast-growing economy. We are the fastest-growing large economy in the country, in the world. India's demand is continuously increasing. Our demand for ICT products, our demand for data center equipment, our demand for high-quality technology and innovation, our demand for raw materials is continuously rising. And in that situation, this deal also opens up opportunities for India to get the best-in-class, world-class technologies to further power the India growth story, the Indian economy. I commend this deal to every Indian, to 140 crore Bharatvasis. Thank you very much.
The Commerce Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, addressing the media in the aftermath of US President Donald Trump announcing the trade deal between India and the US. Piyush Goyal taking it to the opposition, slamming the opposition parties for creating unnecessary fears around this deal. Piyush Goyal reaffirming that this is one of the biggest deals ever struck and that it is only meant to strengthen the India-US relationship and that it will benefit so many Indian businesses across sectors which have US as their main export market. Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, also announcing that there will be a joint statement that will be made soon by India and the US with more details about this deal. Piyush Goyal reaffirming that India has clinched a deal with the US that is better than others, especially others in the region. Let's listen in to what Piyush Goyal had to say.
कि उन्होंने यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के साथ एक बहुत ही बढ़िया ट्रेड डील, जिसका देशवासियों को कई महीनों से इंतजार था, संपन्न किया है। देशहित और जनहित को सामने रखते हुए एक बड़ा मजबूत भारत के भविष्य को चार चांद लगाने वाला ट्रेड डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में कल रात फाइनलाइज किया गया है। मैं 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की तरफ से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का धन्यवाद करता हूं और आप सभी को बधाई देता हूं।
And now we have Adit Kothari, Foreign Affairs and Geopolitical Expert, joining us live from London. Thank you, Adit, for taking time out to be with us on this big, massive news day. We just heard what the Union Commerce Minister, beg your pardon, Piyush Goyal had to say. It was a very clear statement of intent. There is going to be a joint statement soon. But this is all about the fact that India has clinched a deal, a much better deal than its neighbors, than others with the US, and that it is just the opposition that is spreading rumors and fears unnecessarily about it.
Absolutely. I think the important bit that he stressed on, which is explicitly mentioned, is that the tariffs are the new norm. And within that new norm, India has been able to clinch the most competitive deal of all of them. I mean, if you look at Bangladesh, their base tariff rate is about 20%. Pakistan has a base tariff rate of 19%. China is at about 36%. Indonesia is anywhere between 30 to 32%. Vietnam is anywhere between 40 to 43%. So in the grand scheme of things, the competitive advantage remains with India. And that is what the Indians have been able to secure as a consequence of demonstrating spine and standing up to the bully and not caving in. So I think it's a huge message, both from a trade deal perspective and also politically. I think the political message out of this is fairly big for the BJP dispensation, which is in government at the moment. And let's not take that away, because they did stick it out. They went to the United Kingdom. They got the FTA from them. The EU-India FTA, which had been lingering on since 2007 for the longest time, it's suddenly found a fresh breath of life infused in it. Call it the Trump madness effect or call it the Modi magic, irrespective of everything. We were able to cut through that. As a consequence, the textile industries in India, which was suffering at the hands of the high tariffs, which made us less competitive as compared to someone like, say, Bangladesh, which had better access to EU markets. Now, today, the textile markets of India can boast about being more competitive in the grand scheme of things. So yes, everything has fallen in place together, and the ripple effects of all of these trade deals coming together, will be felt economically throughout 2026 and 2027. Karthik.
Stay with us. So we're also being joined now by my colleague Karthik Malhotra in the studio. Karthik, a very telling press conference, because ever since that announcement came from US President Donald Trump on social media, lots of speculation surrounding it. Piyush Goyal taking time out to do two things. One is to talk about the merits of the deal per se and how competitive it is, and the other is the fact that there is too much of misinformation and fear mongering by the opposition.
Right, Krishna. So I think, if we can really call a spade at this point, Piyush Goyal has used the advantage of the press conference to really create a political agenda and a political dialogue, and hasn't really given us too many details when it comes to what is in that trade deal. While towards the end of his press conference, and it lasted about 40 minutes or so, towards the end of the press conference, he did go on to confirm that the deal is in the final stages of detailing. He also mentioned that the joint statement is going to be released shortly. He mentioned shortly, and then he said soon. So we really don't have a timeline for that. He also said that the full details are going to be released via joint statement. So I think we can expect that we aren't going to get any more details directly from the government, and all those details, all those questions which are hanging over this deal are going to be addressed in that joint statement. He also made it clear that the sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy will be protected, and all export-oriented sectors, the MSMEs, which is in your leather space, textile space, marine fisheries, as well as your aircraft components and rubber products, all these exports are going to find a more lucrative market. But beyond that, he has neither confirmed nor denied whether India will stop purchasing Russian oil and India will instead diversify its energy basket to include US and Venezuela, more from US and introduction of Venezuela. He's neither confirmed nor denied whether India has committed, and that's the term which was used in President Trump's Truth Social post, that India has committed to buy $500 billion of equipment, including agriculture products and technology, as well as energy from the US. And in addition to that, he has neither confirmed nor denied whether India has given in to a zero tariff regime when it comes to US imports coming into India.
So, little when it comes to clarity, but a lot when it comes to the messaging over here, Shweta, isn't it? Because this you had comments coming in from Russia in the meanwhile as well, before we could hear official details from India or the US on what exactly this trade deal is going to. This press conference, this media briefing comes at a very crucial time, and as Karthik rightly pointed out, if that joint statement comes soon enough, it'll be better for the sake of clarity of everybody concerned, all parties, the entire world looking at this deal, because that joint statement is probably the only document that's going to tell us the details of this deal, because the media conference did not.
Absolutely. Krishna, a lot was said in that press conference, most of it political, little to do with what the deal entails. There are clarity on a few topics, as Karthik also pointed out, vis-a-vis the reciprocal tariffs and why US President Donald Trump announced it first. Remember, that is a point of contention as to why there wasn't an official announcement from both the sides. And Piyush Goyal did clarify, because the reciprocal tariffs were levied by the US, it made more sense for Donald Trump to go on Truth Social as he does and announce that a trade deal has been reached. But with respect to other contentious issues, namely whether India is going to open up its agriculture sector to US importers, we don't know. There's no clarity. There's no confirmation on that yet. As far as import of Russian oil is concerned, we did hear from Russian sources earlier today that India has not communicated with Russian authorities on whether it's going to taper down its Russian oil imports. So there is no clarity on that, and Piyush Goyal did not elaborate on that. What he did elaborate on is that a joint document will be released, and that document will have the statement, will have the details of the press conference. So a lot was said in that press conference as to how happy the people are with respect to the deal, and how labor-intensive sectors are likely to benefit. There was a lot of conversation on how India's textiles, its engineering goods, farms and fisheries will benefit, but nothing concrete as to what the contours of the deal are. And there's no timeline as well given. So we'll have to, of course, wait for that final statement to come out. But what we do know is that technical details are still being worked at. So technicalities are still not finished, still not over. Now, it's also crucial to point out earlier today, we did hear from our government sources saying that this was, in fact, the first announcement in what could be a comprehensive deal going forward. So a first tranche of announcements could be made very soon, but this is going to be a comprehensive deal. So more announcement could flow in subsequent weeks to come.
Definitely, you know, more announcements could flow in. Just that we don't have a timeline on when. It could be an hour from now. It could be a day from now. We really, you know, it's anybody's guess at this stage. Adit Kothari, you know, all said and done, as of now, when we are having this conversation, we still have that big red colored question mark over Russian oil.
But to be fair, Krishna, look, before 2022, what was India's purchase of the Russian oil? It was negligible. And, you know, post 2022, the only reason why we were actually buying Russian oil was not to do the world a favor, but because India's interest lied with it, with the fact that, you know, we were getting $10 to $12 of discount per barrel. Now that discount is
to
negligible.
do the world a favor, because India's and China's purchase of Russian oil actually kept oil prices stable. So in a way, India did do the world a favor.
There was a brilliant article in Nikkei Asia at the point that actually India was doing world a favor by ensuring that, you know, it was keeping the commodity prices at check. So given that particular aspect, now that the Russian discounts are at $2 to $3 a barrel, you know, it doesn't make rational sense to basically go in. So, you know, non-sanctioned oil is probably what India will look to diversify. But also we've got to remember that Venezuela, despite its hoo-ha that President Trump has made out of it, you know, produces 1 billion barrel a day, as opposed to Russia, which produces 11 billion barrel a day. So will India be able to get access to, you know, its internal demand through the Venezuelan produce? You know, that's a big question mark that I think, you know, oil experts will have to look into. I don't think particularly that the Venezuelan oil will be able to gratify demands all across the world, including that of China, which currently stands at about almost 50% of Russian oil consumption, and India at about 38%. So I don't see, you know, Venezuelan produce being able to gratify that sort of demand. So that question, I think, will linger on. I think India will continue to find, you know, dealing with Russian either through private enterprises or even through Bharat Petroleum and Indian Oil. I think it will only clamp down on the basis of how much discount the Russian oil manufacturers are really giving to India.
And Krishna, just to add, okay, go ahead, Adit, finish your point.
So sure, just one quick line. I think the one red line that Piyush Goyal mentioned in his briefing is very, very important. That's with regards to the agri and the dairy sectors, which India, I mean, it would have been nice, competitive if India had opened it up, but electorally, any government that does open it up, you know, is looking at political suicide. So the BJP government is not going to do that. I think they've made it very, very crystal clear from that perspective. What we will see is a sort of a monkey balancing where they will, you know, start exporting avocados and almonds and cranberries and raspberries to India. And that is what Donald Trump will basically go back to his MAGA constituencies and basically demonstrate, you know, this is what I've basically achieved out of India, the India-US deal. Sorry, Krishna.
To be fair, we have enough and more California almonds already making their way to India, isn't it, Karthik?
We do, but you know, to the point of avocados, eventually US will have to import them from Mexico and then export them to India. So India's better off just buying them from Mexico directly.
Interesting, but you know, just if you're speaking about avocados, strangely, the largest selling is a company called Westphalia, you know, which is an Australia-based company, you know, which make not just avocados but for all kinds of fruits and vegetables. But you know, Karthik, getting back to this point about Russian oil, I want to understand what everybody's looking at is that did India cave into any kind of pressure from the US to strike this deal to decide where it's going to buy oil from? Because India has clearly maintained, you know, all the time that it will buy oil, you know, at the right market rates, wherever is the cheapest possible, and nobody can tell it otherwise.
You're right, Krishna, but you know, there's this fine little word called sanctions. So, you know, you've got to try and read between the lines when it comes to Donald Trump and his musings on social media, because simply put, there are exactly two Russian oil firms which are sanctioned.
Yes, sir.
Just like Venezuelan oil was sanctioned. Right. So India never bought oil from Venezuela during the period that it was sanctioned. And similarly, India is right now not buying oil from Rosneft or Lukoil, the two companies which are sanctioned. Is the rest of the Russian fleet of oil containers sanctioned? Well, to my understanding, not yet. So yes, I agree with Adit. India is going to maintain strategic autonomy. India will look at its own domestic interest and will continue to procure for its energy needs from whichever supplier best serves the purpose. But at the end of the day, if you have Russian oil and Venezuelan oil and American oil in the overall mix of this OPEC plus, if we can call it, overall commodity prices will only go down unless somebody throttles the supply. So prices going down is going to be a win-win for anybody in the world for that matter.
Prices going down is going to be a win-win for everybody. Shweta, what is left to be seen is whether this deal is a win-win for both India and the US, because the allegations are that it's not exactly as much of a win for India as it's being claimed to be. But if you just summarize what Piyush Goyal, our honorable commerce minister, had to say in that media briefing, he picked up a whole range of sectors to talk about how this deal is crucial, is going to be crucial for them. It could be anything. It's not just the marine sectors like fisheries and others, but he's talking about manufacturing and other technology-led sectors as well, where he thinks, or where he's said very clearly in no uncertain terms that this deal is going to be a boon for them.
Absolutely. A lot was said politically, little was said vis-a-vis the deal and the anticipation of the details. So the details are still anticipated, Krishna, as I pointed out. But on the Russian oil front, while Donald Trump would like to take credit, let's not forget that over the past 1 year, India's purchase of Russian crude oil has in fact gone down substantially, 38% in value, about 31% in volume, from 1.8 million barrels per day to 1.3 million barrels today. And that's to do with market forces, little to do with Donald Trump, while he continues to take credit for India's purchase of Russian oil going down. Now, whether India will decide to further bring it down for its own strategic interest, we'll of course have to wait and watch out for that final press conference. But to your question, or what was announced, a lot was said. It said that India got its best deal. It's a strong India-centric deal. It was a complex deal. A lot of double standards being shown as far as leader of opposition is concerned. The leader of opposition not very happy when no deal was announced, not happy when a deal has been announced. So, he did take a dig a lot at Rahul Gandhi and at the Congress party, saying that they have a negative mentality when it comes to India and its affairs, but specifically also talked about RCEP. And that's important because, remember, India pulled out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in 2024, citing that it doesn't really meet India's interests and needs as far as India's MSME sector is concerned. MSME will take a beating if India were to become a part of RCEP. So, he did point out how the Congress party under its regime got India entangled into a deal which wasn't really a win-win, but BJP under Prime Minister Modi has got us a fair deal, and the contours of that deal are still awaited. He also talked about how everybody is celebrating it and how Rahul Gandhi continues to be an epitome of negativity. But apart from that, he said it's going to be a win-win for seafood exporters, for labor-intensive sectors, MSME, engineering, aircraft, textile, leather goods, so on and so forth. So a lot said there, as I said, politically, but a lot left to imagination on what could be the final contours of the deal. I think for me, it's important whether India is going to allow US exports to come in duty-free and tariff-free, because Donald Trump said it's going to be 0% duty, going to be 0% tariff. If that goes through, I think a lot of people are not going to read very positively into it. But again, let's not jump the gun, because India has also clarified that we are going to protect our sensitive sectors like dairy and agriculture. So India has clarified that these sectors will be protected. Whether they'll be partially opened or not, again, lot left to imagination there. But India is making it stand clear that it's a win-win proposition.
Okay, we won't jump the gun, Shweta. Absolutely not. Like, we're trying our best not to jump the gun, to tell people who are watching this broadcast just to say to call a spade a spade. For borrowing my colleague Karthik Malhotra's word, we're trying to call a spade a spade. Adit Kothari, when you call a spade, you have to. What has been disclosed so far? Are the reasons why these questions have arisen from the opposition, or for anybody, anybody who's skeptical about this deal. One is that is the Russian oil question mark, which we spoke about, and the other is the fact that zero duty on American goods, zero duty on Californian almonds, American avocados. I'm not sure. As you rightly said, no government will take that chance because it's going to be an electoral disaster for them, and clearly the BJP will be in no mood. So a lot of attention will go into that joint statement to see what the US gets from this deal.
True. I think I concur with what Shweta is saying. That 0% did put off a lot of people, but at the same time, you've got to look at the precedence of the man that actually put it out in his tweet. I mean, historically, he has said a lot of things, and nothing of that sort has actually materialized on ground. So you cannot take Donald Trump on the basis of what he puts out on Truth Social or what he puts out on X.
What can where can you take that face value from?
So
where?
The finer details when the joint statement is out either tomorrow or in the foreseeable future, I think we'll just have to wait it out. Unfortunately, it's a game that we will have to play. That is the nature of the beast that a Mercurial Trump at the helm of affairs of the world has created for all of us. It leaves us very, very anxious.
Well. It's not just the US that gets thrown into uncertainty. It's the rest of the world that deals with the US because of Donald Trump. We also have Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, consulting editor of the Business Standard, with us on the broadcast. Adit, stay with us, Adit. Let me just take this across to Shubhamoy as well. Shubhamoy, thank you so much for joining us at such short notice. The pace at which things are developing, we had a massive press conference right now from India's Commerce Minister. There could be a joint statement shortly or soon. We don't know. It could be either of them. But all eyes will be on that joint statement. But, the thing I want to come to you with is this. Yes, there is the opposition is talking about pressure on India to get this deal done. But let's never forget the amount of pressure that Trump himself is under to get a deal with India.
Absolutely. I mean, most of us had sort of, I wouldn't say given up, but had sort of bargained for a much longer time frame. And essentially, there was no pressure on India to do it now. So it is from the reverse side. In fact, I think I can speak with fair amount of knowledge that the India-EU deal has actually been quite something that has rattled the White House. This was not something that had been foreseen, and it's definitely the pace at which it had got signed. That was a very big one. In trade diplomacy, an India-EU deal has been in the works for the last 15 years. So the very fact that India and EU signed it, signed in sense now the states where the countries will be signing it, was something for America to definitely get concerned about. See, because essentially what you're doing is you're creating a new financial architecture. It's not just trade. There's a financial architecture that comes along. If India and EU are trading, and if they decide that we don't want to use dollar, we just use euro, just imagine the amount of, and euro doesn't need to be benchmarked against the dollar. Euro is its own hard currency. So India, INR euro pair, that can become an extremely upsetting pair. And remember, we already have a pair that's happening with the India-UK. Then there's the India-Japan. So there is a very big amount of, FOMO position for USA. And I think that's where exactly this tweet comes from.
Okay. Shubhamoy, stay with us.
Sorry, can I just quickly jump in? Shubhamoy said he's saying it with, right amount of knowledge. He didn't say confidence. That's an interesting choice of words. Shubhamoy, what do you know that we don't know?
Well, what I know, look, this way. I was listening to what you were discussing, and one of the points that was said was that we cannot depend on the Truth Social comments by Trump, because Trump, has that famous taco. Trump always chickens out. But it's actually not that way, because what happens is that there is business being lost. And the spectacle some days ago, and it was a big spectacle, and there was a reason for that spectacle that came out, has definitely, there was a huge amount of discussion in the White House with the India government, with the US ambassador, that why did this happen, and why aren't we there? Remember, India has not given any commitment on easing of Russian oil. Even as we speak, Russian imports, oil imports into India is still continuing. And there is, obviously, in fact, there is, even if we look at the February consignments, those are not zero. In fact, they are substantial. So there is no reason to have said that what was the change on the ground. So if nothing did change on the ground, what changed was in the air. And when it changes in the air, it's basically perception. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, what has changed is perception. Karthik, when you look at this deal from the way Shubham was talking about, the trigger being the India-EU mother of all deals, but the triggers began back a week before that in Davos. Isn't it? Especially with the comments that came from the Canadian Prime Minister as well.
Absolutely. And if you put it in a larger geopolitical context beyond Davos, you've also had two global leaders visiting China. So there is also a China angle to this. And the fact that there has been a thawing of relations between India and China. Overall, I think a little bit of insecurity definitely creeping up, onto US President Donald Trump. But coming back to the press conference that we just heard, Krishna, if you ask me honestly, the press conference by Piyush Goyal delivered about, 20 minutes back it ended, was actually worthy of a tweet. Because whatever he said in that press conference, which was specific to the trade deal, was enough to be tweeted out. It would have done the job. But India was actually looking for answers in that press conference. When the press conference was announced, we were all expecting that we are going to find some details, and those details continue to be sketchy. So until those details come out, one can only assume two things. One, that whatever US President Donald Trump has said is the truth, and let's take it at face value, because the government has not denied it, it has neither confirmed it. And number two, maybe, and just maybe, the deal is still in certain stages of negotiation, not really detailed out, but we just have agreed on a headline number that yes, it's going to be 18%, it's not going to be 50% effective immediately. Beyond that, we really don't have anything new emerging on this story ever since practically last night when Trump had put out that first Truth Social post.
Okay. Nothing has emerged since that post by US President Donald Trump, except the fact that we had that media briefing by India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. Let's quickly listen to an excerpt of that, and then we'll continue this conversation.
कि उन्होंने यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका के साथ एक बहुत ही बढ़िया ट्रेड डील, जिसका देशवासियों को कई महीनों से इंतजार था, संपन्न किया है। देशहित और जनहित को सामने रखते हुए एक बड़ा मजबूत भारत के भविष्य को चार चांद लगाने वाला ट्रेड डील माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में कल रात फाइनलाइज किया गया है। मैं 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की तरफ से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का धन्यवाद करता हूं और आप सभी को बधाई देता हूं।
To Adit Kothari, who continues to be with us. Adit Kothari, how do you size up the situation at this stage? Because one was that there was supposedly the mother of all deals that India signed with the EU that rankled US the wrong way. There were concerns about India-US ties getting hampered because of India's increasing closeness with the European Union, and of course the threat that the euro poses to the dollar per se. But in this context, the fact that it is the US that has blinked and not exactly India, because India, in a sense, has stood up to the bully. The US has blinked. How much it has blinked, we don't know, because that joint statement will tell us, how much the US is willing to give way to get this deal done.
So I think on this one, I'm going to go with Shubham conviction. Firstly, I was surprised that he used the word FOMO. Him not being a Gen Z, but it's 6 days apart. I mean, look at the speed that, suddenly this came into life. And that Scott Bessent's interview to ABC, he seemed very rattled. He seemed extremely nervous. And he did not seem very happy about the fact that, India and EU were able to stitch up this deal, which was, in the sidelines and the lingering since 2007. So, suddenly to see them, get rattled like this because India was being able to do this. And the way China had been pivoting itself as, this global player who's open to multilateralism, who's open to, global trade, is not looking at protectionism as a policy. It sends out a lot of message that, maybe America overplayed its hand, and maybe Donald Trump's, routine from the art of the deal that he wrote in 1987 is no longer valid in 2025. I think that's the grand messaging that, it should be taken. I mean, from my perspective, my Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, went to Britain, and it's after 8 years. We've had multiple prime ministers in Britain since. We've had Theresa May, we've had Rishi Sunak, we've had Boris Johnson. None of these guys went to China. But the transatlantic partnership is also falling apart. People are getting very nervous about a mercurial Trump at the helm of affairs, which is why they're getting pushed to other global powers like China and India. And that we saw with the kind of bonhomie that Xi and Starmer basically displayed on stage. So, a lot on stake. I think this is something that the US is basically writing a new script on how to alienate friends and allies. Krishna.
Okay, Shubhaboy, the fact of the matter is that when that joint statement comes out, we'll know what exactly India has chosen to do when it comes to Russian oil. And that decision, that choice, will have a major impact in the India-Russia relations as well.
Karthik, it's difficult to bet. I have a feeling that the joint statement will be much more terms, broad terms. It will not sort of say that India will be making zero Russian oil, or there'll be something or others. For both countries, actually, Trump has helped. He definitely has gone out to say it, and he wanted the deal. So India is a gracious nation, and I can understand these are seasoned negotiators. India will also not try to push it to sort of say, okay, that we therefore want everything.
Okay.
So I suspect the deal will be in a much more, generalities, instead of getting into very specifics. So yes, that India will be doing more investment. India will be doing more things to be picking up from USA. That's there. A very major thing that's there that differentiates the India-US deal from the other deals is that India has not committed, and Trump is also saying it, to set up any investments in USA. Other than Japan, Korea, EU, all have committed that they will do investments in USA. India deal is just trade deal, and $500 billion is not here today. It's Indian-US was about $125 billion. It'll take time to build up $500 billion. India government will not be importing things all of a sudden to make people happy.
Yeah.
So it will be generalities. I suspect we won't get very deep specifications about the sectors which will be which will get 18%. Those will come out. That will not be in the deal. I suppose that will be in the details that the framework agreement that India and US commerce departments will work out, sector to sector, each one. The 6-digit tariff schedules, places like textiles, places like diamonds, gems and jewelry, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But those would come later. My sense is the joint statement will be more on the big idea, the big thought, rather than getting into, I do not expect there'll be things. Yeah.
Fair enough. No specifics when it comes to oil. Karthik, Shweta also continues to be with us. Shweta, I'll come to you, but quickly, Karthik, we're talking about timelines over here, $500 billion, 5-year, 10-year timeline maybe. But Trump is not going to be president for more than 2 to 3 years. The American Constitution doesn't allow it.
Absolutely. And, if you look at the trade, and, Shubhaboy was just giving us those numbers, about $130 billion worth of trade, out of which, remember, India has a trade surplus with the US, and that is something which has continued to irk Donald Trump, and which is why we saw the 25% reciprocal tariff going up to 50 and all of that. But the fact of the matter is that right now, India imports, let's say, give or take, about $50 billion worth of American goods. Now, over how much time and how much would be the CAGR on that for that to go up to, for that to double, first of all, is going to be a CAGR of about 7.5%. So India will have to increase its, its capacity of import from the US over, let's say, 7, 8, 9, 10% for it to double in a period of, let's say, about 8, 9 years. So if you're talking about 500 billion, at a CAGR of about 7% or so, it'll take us about 9 years to double trade. So we are actually, even if you want to meet that $500 import figure over 10 years, we are actually looking at a much more massive scale of growth of American imports coming into India. But there's also something which is likely to offset that. And one could potentially also say that thank you, US President Donald Trump, because it was only thanks to Trumpism, Trump tariffs, that the entire world sort of got into this chaotic mode and ended up stitching these bilateral and FTA deals with each other. So if you ask me, I think it's only thanks to Donald Trump and his tariff that India-UK got stitched, India-New Zealand got stitched, India-EU got stitched, and the timing is also great because, the MSME sector, which was under threat with the US tariffs, got a window to sort of, explore markets in these three regions that I mentioned, and also got that 10,000 crore rupees bonanza on budget day. And a day after that, you also have the India-US trade deal sort of being worked out. So overall, for the MSME sector, it is definitely great news. India's exports are likely to shore up much better. But then again, it depends on what point of view you want to take, because 18% compared to 15% is fantastic, but 18% compared to next to nil tariffs before Trump came back to the Oval Office is still a fairly high number.
Okay, we're talking numbers, and Karthik, you've talked about 9-year, 10-year period, CAGR, so many specifics. That's more specifics than the deal that got announced so far, actually. Shweta,
that's pure mathematics.
Shweta, I have to ask you, after a point when it comes to Trump, you have to take these numbers as emotions, isn't it? He emotionally just gives you a number.
I think Karthik is being too technical about it. I don't think he worked. There was no mathematics there when he wrote $500 billion in a tweet. I don't think he worked out the CAGR and compounded it. And then
just for context, $500 billion is actually the trade target, the bilateral trade target by 2030, which means import and export put together. So India importing $500 billion is definitely unlikely to happen soon. I don't
100%.
know, how Trump cooked up that number.
But Trump is the one who makes the impossible happen. You never really know at this stage, isn't it?
Ethan Hunt.
Shweta, fact of the matter is that these numbers and that first social media post will all be forgotten once the actual contours of the deal come our ways. And right now, all we can take from what we've heard so far is an idea, is a vision of what they've looked forward to when it comes to putting this deal together.
We're hearing more, as a matter of fact. I think we'll be breaking it in just a while. But what we're also hearing is that it will take at least a week for that final announcement on the contours of the deal, which is again going to be a document, as Shubhamoy pointed out, not giving you the details of what has been worked out, but giving you a policy intent.
Did you say a week, Shweta?
A week is what we're picking up. I think it'll be I think we're going to break it very soon on air as well. But a week. So we're not looking at today, tomorrow. We're looking at very long timelines here, Krishna. As you pointed out, he's Donald Trump is only going to be here for 2 more years, perhaps. So we don't know whether the deal will be in works for that long. But there is a long timeline we're looking at, and this timeline I think will go beyond Trump's reign in the White House. But so far as numbers is concerned, I mean, as Karthik rightly pointed out, a $500 billion deal where India itself buys US goods worth $500 billion. I think those are very far-fetched numbers. I'm not sure if even the mathematics for the next 7-8 years will make it possible. Perhaps Shubhamoy, who can crunch the number for us and let us know if that's workable. But we're looking at a trade deal of $130 to $140 billion going forward, if and when that trade deal comes into fruition. And given all the contours are still awaited, I don't know how $500 billion was arrived at, to be honest.
Okay, Shubhamoy, we're talking about the 2030 target for the bilateral trade. 2030 will be the year when Donald Trump is not in office anymore. To start with.
Won't be. The big thing that he has done with this deal, or rather with the last few months, two things that has happened very well for India, and I think we are all agreed here. One is that it has pushed India's reforms. So lots of work which we couldn't have done has actually gotten done. And I think both Krishna, you and Karthik and Shweta, I mean, we people are all pointing it out. That's one big thing. The MSME point is a very well taken one, that India has actually got many of, I don't think the budget would have been so impressive had it not been for the Trump tantrum. That's one thing. I take it on board. The immediate impact of the numbers and the deal is definitely the pressure of on the Indian rupee will be off for significant, and that I think is the biggest takeaway. that India will be doing for the for the RBI. It will be a major relief going in for the monetary policy, that they will not have to actually look at what is to be done to shore up confidence in the Indian economy. So I think that those two will be very major things that we will have, irrespective of which sectors and how it all plays out. So that I think is something that we can look forward, definitely. That's the reason why I think the CEO was talking about a 7.4% growth rate, because immediately India's lots of pressure points has got lifted. Those will stay with us.
Shubhamoy, you're talking about the US dollar and, the Indian currency vis-a-vis the US dollar. When the dollar index already is under 100, it's at about 97. So there is pressure on the US currency as well. And that is something that we are also seeing in the bond yields in the US at the moment. So how does that equation play out in the context of the India-US trade deal?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because if you look at it, we have this time targeted for a bit higher borrowing than we were expecting to, 16.9. Instead of that, we are doing about 17.2 billion borrowing, 17.2 trillion. So there's a large amount of borrowing that is going to happen, and those borrowing, the Indian bond yields will definitely soften as we go ahead. Definitely will soften, and this is something that India will be able to take it straight on. So those numbers, it definitely helps. Remember, our inflation having stayed very low will now tend to sort of creep up a bit. So in that context, having a softer bond yield allows the government to borrow, allows the states to also to take on their borrowing. The bond markets, the big relief for the bond market is what I'm really looking forward to. Takeaways for sectors to actually expand their volumes in terms of production is not something that I'm really looking at this point. That those will take time to build out. So yes, Indian financial management will be a far better stuff. I suspect that the markets were looking, in fact not suspect, the Indian markets were looking a bit, we're considering that India might have to borrow even more. That is definitely off the table now.
Okay, fair enough. Before we go any further, let's quickly listen to an excerpt of that press briefing that Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal did when he spoke about the profits that India will get because of this deal.
US trade deal में भी भारत के जो सेंसिटिव सेक्टर्स हैं, एग्रीकल्चर को लेके, डेयरी को लेके, उनको संरक्षित किया गया है। हमने पूरे देश भर से आई हुई खबरों को देखा, चारों ओर उल्लास है। हमारे जितने लोग भारत के निर्यात में जुड़े हुए, भारत के टेक्नोलॉजी सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए, भारत में नई आधुनिक टेक्नोलॉजी लाकर यहां ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन्स, ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन्स का हिस्सा बनना चाहते हैं, ग्लोबल कैपेबिलिटी सेंटर्स लगाना चाहते हैं, निवेश करना चाहते हैं। अलग अलग क्षेत्र जो विशेषकर लेबर इंटेंसिव है, जिसमें लाखों करोड़ों लोगों को नौकरी का, रोजगार का साधन मिलता है, वो सब कितने उत्साहित हैं इस ट्रेड डील से। हमारे मछुआरे जो सी फूड एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, उन्होंने जिस प्रकार से सभी कोस्टल रीजन्स में खुशी मनाई है, ये दर्शाता है कि ये ट्रेड डील भारत के उज्जवल भविष्य का शुभ संकेत लेके आई है। मित्रों, मैं मानता हूं कि इस ट्रेड डील से हमारे जो सूक्ष्म, लघु और मध्यम उद्योग है, एमएसएमई सेक्टर है, हमारे इंजीनियरिंग सेक्टर के सभी प्लेयर्स, चाहे ऑटो कंपोनेंट्स बनाते हो, एयरक्राफ्ट पार्ट्स बनाते हो, इंजीनियरिंग के अलग अलग प्रकार के सामान अमेरिका में बेचने का काम करते हो या भविष्य में करना चाहें, हमारे टेक्सटाइल क्षेत्र, हमारा जेम एंड ज्वेलरी सेक्टर, हमारा लेदर गुड सेक्टर, हमारा मरीन गुड सेक्टर, सभी को ढेर सारे अवसर, ढेर सारे मौके इस ट्रेड डील के माध्यम से मिलेंगे। मैं माननीय
We take a very short breather here on the conversation at this stage. We'll be back with Shubhamoy, Adit, Karthik, Shweta, Ambassador Meera Shankar, who joins us, and more in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching News 9.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Co-powered by Tata Capital. Count on us.
सोच रहा हूँ टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस ले लूं ताकि मेरे बाद फैमिली को पैसों की कमी ना हो। तू भी ले ले।
अबे जल्दी क्या है, बाद में देख लेंगे।
आराम से। अब तक कुणाल को हार्ट अटैक आ गया यार।
पॉलिसी बाजार पर 0 GST के साथ अब 1 करोड़ का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 400 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
रिश्तों को रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो।
Birla Opus Paints.
Indian Racing Festival, only on Star Sports and Jio Hotstar.
हमें सेंटर को बड़ा करना चाहिए,
लेकिन कैसे हो पाएगा?
आपका सोना है ना?
सोना?
हाँ, सोना क्या नहीं कर सकता? भारत की सबसे बड़ी गोल्ड लोन NBFC मुथूट फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और लोगों की मुश्किलों को दूर कीजिए। देखा, सोना क्या नहीं कर सकता? कॉल कीजिए 1-800-313-1212 पे।
When Trump captures Maduro, News 9 breaks it first.
It's happening far away, but it has tremendous consequence for the world. What happens next?
Biggest international headline of the hour.
The U.S. has conducted military strikes.
This is the Venezuelan president.
Maduro faces multiple charges, including narco-terrorism.
This is Maduro being taken to the New York court.
Donald Trump indicated that Greenland might be next.
Where will Donald Trump stop?
A dramatic U.S. operation, power shifts in Venezuela. High-stakes geopolitics unfolding. What does this mean for Venezuela?